Because if we can learn how to learn, and I'm talking to the parents and anyone really who has a brain, if you can learn how to learn, you could grant all your own wishes. Meaning that if you can learn how to focus, concentrate, critically think, absorb information, understand it, retain it, then what can you apply that to? Everything.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Dr. David Perlmutter. Welcome again to the Empowering Neurologist. On this program, we've talked quite a bit about lifestyle factors that will help keep the brain healthy, help keep the brain functional. We've certainly talked about exercise and sleep and a lot about nutrition and about supplements, but we really haven't yet opened the box as it relates to activities that we can engage in that can actually enhance the brain's functionality, that can help us with our memory, that can help us with the various functions that our brain is called upon to perform day in and day out. And we have with us today a very special guest, Jim Kwik. Jim Kwik is world renowned for his tools that he has given people that allows them to really refine and enhance how their brains are able to work. Let me tell you a little bit about him. After a childhood brain injury left Kwik with a learning challenge, he created innovative strategies to dramatically enhance his mental performance. For over 25 years, Jim Kwik has worked closely with top actors, athletes, CEOs, and other super achievers in all walks of life to unlock their true capabilities. Jim specializes in memory improvement, brain optimization, and accelerated learning. He speaks on the power of the brain to various audiences around the world, totaling as many as 200,000. His online videos have garnered millions of views each, and he's frequently featured in a variety of print publications and online publications, including Forbes, Fast Company, and he's been featured on CNBC as well. Sharing his brain optimization insight, Jim is also the host of the #1 educational program on iTunes as it relates to brain health and health in general. It is called the Kwik Brain Podcast. So I'm really excited to spend some time with Jim Kwik today and hoping that I get some tools to optimize my brain as well. So here we go. Hi, Jim Kwik. Welcome to the program.
So good to be here, Dr. Perlmutter, and really excited about this interview. And we also thank you for being on our Brain podcast also as well.
So I want to just extend a little bit what I said in the intro, and that is, a lot of the work that we've done has worked on the stuff of the brain, the actual makeup of the brain, how we can change our nutrition to build a better brain, reduce things like inflammation, pretty much dealing with the hardware. And now you bring to the table the software. Okay, now that we've got a good brain, what can we do to amplify its functionality? And I want to let all of our viewers know that we're going to get to some really important tools for each and every one of you later in our time together today. But Jim, I'd first like to start by just going through that early life misadventure as it was, but you made the lemonade out of the lemons. So tell us what happened to you and what you learned.
So a lot of times when people see me at events that you and I have shared the stage at, I'll maybe take a few minutes to do a demonstration where I'll memorize maybe 20 or 30 or 40 people's names in an audience, they'll pass around a microphone and challenge me memorizing 100 random words or 100 random numbers, and I'll recall it forwards and backwards. But I always tell people I don't do this to impress you. I really do this to express to you what's possible, because I believe the truth is that we all have that potential, regardless of our age or our background, our education level, our financial situation, gender, history, IQ. And the reason why I know it's possible is not only have I taught this for the past 3 decades, the past 30 years with students in every country, 195 nations, but also we have a lot of feedback, but also from my own personal journey. As you mentioned, I had a kind of an inflection point when I was a child where I had a very bad fall, a traumatic brain injury in kindergarten of all places. I was in class. I took a very bad fall headfirst into an iron grate radiator. I was rushed to the hospital, in the emergency room, and My parents said I was really never the same after that, where I was very curious, and as a child is curious, playful, energized. I became very shut down, and where it really showed up was in school. I could not maintain my focus, and that's kind of typical now for kids. But back 40 years plus years ago, it was a lot different. There weren't these labels. I had poor memory. It took me 3 years longer just to learn how to read, compared to all the other children. I remember I was slowing down a class when I was 9 years old, and I was being teased pretty badly for it. And a teacher stepped up to my defense, but all I remember her saying, she pointed to me in front of the whole class and said, "That's the boy with the broken brain." And she was trying to point out that this boy has had some challenges and leave him alone. But all that registered in my head was, oh, I didn't know I had the broken brain. So every single time I did badly in school or a test or exam or wasn't picked for sports, I would always say to myself, "Oh, it's because I have the broken brain. That's why." And so that really continued throughout school, through all of middle school and junior high and high school. And eventually, around age 18, I had a breakthrough where I discovered, I hit it kind of a wall. And it's interesting because I wanted to take my mess and turn it into my message. I learned some skills and strategies. I started studying a little bit more about the brain. I was fascinated with how the brain works because I wanted to know, how does the brain work so I could work my brain, specifically when it came to learning, because that was really where I struggled. How does memory work so I could work my memory? And I started studying adult learning theory, brain mechanics, multiple intelligence theory. I had these curiosity, like, what did people do before technology? What before they had phones and computers and printing presses? How did people pass on information, generation to generation around campfires? And so I learned these old ancient memory techniques that dated back 2,500 years ago with the ancient Greeks to, an interest in speed reading. And so a lot of what I cover, as you and I have discussed offline in my podcast, is it's teaching people the software, how to focus, how to concentrate, how to study, how to remember names and faces and client information and product information, facts, figures, read, understand, and the important thing is also taking care of the hardware also, which is in your wheelhouse and your superpowers. And I've learned so much from your many books and trainings, because you can learn a great strategy on how to remember names, but if you have all this, high inflammation, uric acid, and then you're not going to get the results you desire and deserve. So, I turned my struggles into my strengths, and then I couldn't help but help other people, and really my mission in life is to build better, brighter brains, no brain left behind.
No brain left behind. That said, we live in a time where we're not falling down and hitting our heads in kindergarten, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, there's a lot going on around us right now as you and I have this conversation that is threatening people's cognitive ability. Call it like it is.
Yeah.
So, what's the effect of our current high stress scenario, and what can be done about that?
Yeah, and I encourage everyone to take some notes on this. We'll turn this into a little master class. And please, people, screenshot this and tag both of us and post it and share this conversation, share this podcast with everybody, because this is such an important conversation. I think we live in the millennium of the mind, right? No longer is it like 100 years ago, agricultural age, industrial age, where it was based on brute strength. Today, it's brain strength, right? It's no longer, muscle power. Today, our value in society is our mind power. And I really do believe, like my book title says, that it is limitless. And so there are four forces we need to be really cognizant of, because I like to talk a little bit about the problem, maybe 20%, 80% on the solution. We live in an age right now of age of abundance. It's very exciting. We have access to the world's information, unfeathered access, with podcasts like ours and yours, and books and YouTube and all the things that people are consuming this. And it's a very exciting time. Yet technology is also not creating extra challenge, but really amplifying, and how it's affecting our brains, specifically four of them. And I call them in book Limitless, the four horsemen of the mental apocalypse, just to kind of get a little dramatic, And so really quickly, I alliterate everything to make it easy, memorable. So I'll make them all D's. The first one is digital deluge. And this is where we're drowning information. The amount of information is doubling at dizzying speeds. I did a program at Google, and I remember at the time the chairman is quoted as saying that the amount of information that's being created from the dawn of humanity, since human beings walked the planet, to the year 2003, just a couple of decades ago, that amount of information, I mean, you think about the mass of that information, that now is created every 2 days online.
Wow.
And so, it's like keeping up is like with your job or your school, it's like taking a sip of water out of a fire hose. And it creates, health issues that are detrimental to, our family, in our workplace, information fatigue syndrome, information anxiety, information overload, right? Higher blood pressure, compression of leisure time, more sleeplessness, all these things that are hurting our productivity, our performance, and really our peace of mind. And so that's why two of the superpowers I talk about in our podcast book and so on is keeping up with that digital deluge. The art and science of speed reading and comprehension, the how to study properly. Because remember, school taught us what to learn, but they didn't show us how to learn. There was no classes on focus and concentration, on recollection and retention. I always thought it should have been the fourth R in school: reading, writing, arithmetic. What about remembering? Right? Socrates said, "Learning is remembering," and that takes us to the second supervillain, which is really digital dementia. Digital dementia. It really summarizes like the high reliance we have to our external technology to serve as external memory storage devices, right? It keeps your phone, keeps your calendar, it keeps your to-dos, it keeps all the phone numbers, right? And by the way, how many phone numbers did you know you used to know, or most people,
I can remember phone numbers from third grade.
right? We used to remember all the phone numbers, growing up, but how
Now
many
it's
phone
either
numbers
speed
do we
dial
know?
or Siri will take care of it for me.
Exactly. So
Digital
currently we
dementia.
Right. Currently, we remember maybe one or two or three current phone numbers. And not that I want to memorize 500 phone numbers. Nobody wants to do that. But it should be concerning we've lost the ability to remember one sometimes, or a PIN number, or a passcode, or I
Or
believe
how
two
to
of the
get
most costly
somewhere.
word. Yeah, how to get somewhere. Because technology is showing us how to do that also. So we're not building, I believe our brain is like a muscle. It's like obviously it's an organ, but it's use it or lose it, and so that's, as a brain coach, I want, just like a personal trainer wants to make your body stronger, more flexible, more energized, more pliable. I want your mental muscles, your memory to be stronger, your thinking to be sharper and clearer, your creativity to be more fluid and pliable and flexible. And so digital dementia is a challenge. So that's why the third superpower, on top of having a greater ability to read faster and study, is a better memory. And memory, there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's a trained memory and there's an untrained memory. And I'll challenge everybody here. I'll give people, in this conversation, some things to remember, and I'll show you how to memorize it. And you will blow your own mind in most cases. Third supervillain, besides digital deluge and digital dementia, is digital distraction. And I don't think there's anyone, in the world that doesn't feel,
Can you hold
more
on a second?
distracted.
Oh, no, I just got a text. No, I'm just kidding.
And and every ring and ping and ding and app notification, social media alert, we're being driven to distraction. So how do we maintain our concentration and our focus in those times of distraction? And so the fourth superpower we talk about and we train is focus and concentration. And then finally, the fourth supervillain, after digital deluge, digital distraction, dementia, is just a term that I coined called digital deduction. And really it's this, we've not only outsourced our memory, but in a lot of cases, we've outsourced our thinking to technology, to algorithms that will just, in some ways make our life more convenient. And again, technology is not, for me, it's not a good or bad thing. It's just, is it useful or not? Technology, fire is a technology. Fire could cook your food or it could burn down your home, right? It's just how it's applied. Digital deduction is, as you mentioned, we need this app to get us from here to there, and so we haven't developed those visual spatial intelligence, ability. We're not flexing those muscles on the regular. Algorithms, whatever you engage with, you see more of, and so you never get to see other people's points of views, especially on Instagram and Facebook, whether it's political ideology or anything else. We don't There's tests even with students where this generation is not doesn't have the same analytical, rational ability, logical, if you will, as the previous generation, and they're attributing some of that to the technology not teaching, just showing us what, but also it's not teaching us how to think, but really, well, how to think certainly, but also what to think. So we're not exercising those critical faculties, and so that's why we also teach critical thinking. Creative thinking, problem solving, divergent thinking also as well. And I think these are things that should have been taught back in school. And so I'm very passionate with our podcasts and our books and our videos. And 95% of everything we publish is free, um, including we donated 100% of our book proceeds to Limitless to build schools around the world for children. But it's our mission right now to fill in the gaps in those education, because I believe that we live in an age of autonomous electric cars, spaceships that are going to Mars, but our vehicle choice often when it comes to our schooling is often more like a horse and buggy. And it's not a teacher's fault. You know, when I was going through my challenges, my mother became a special education teacher to help me with my learning disabilities, and she stayed in the school system for her 40 years in public service. But it's more of a systemic challenge, just like whether you take medicine or healthcare or any other industry, it just hasn't evolved, in a functional way.
Well, as you mentioned, your mother and her ability to work with you, et cetera. These days, a lot of children are being homeschooled. So,
Yeah.
what do you have to offer up to parents who are involved in that now that not every kid is back in school? What are some of the tools for parents that they can leverage with respect to getting the most out of homeschooling?
Absolutely. So I believe that it's not how smart your kids are or how smart you are. It's how are you smart. So that's the precept that I come from. That school is a great place to learn what to learn: math, history, science, Spanish. But there are zero classes on how to learn those things. So an emphasis on our value in our career when we're being compared apples to apples with somebody for a job when we leave school is what we bring to the table: our knowledge, our skills, and our abilities. And I think one of the most important abilities for children to focus on in school, besides social emotional learning, is really meta learning. Meta learning is the science of learning how to learn, because the one constant is going to be change. And the half-life information, even in medicine, in health and wellness, it's getting shorter and shorter, right? And information gets easily outdated. And so our ability to learn or relearn or unlearn is really paramount, because if we can learn how to learn, and I'm talking to the parents and anyone really who has a brain, if you can learn how to learn, you could grant all your own wishes. Meaning that if you can learn how to focus, concentrate, critically think, absorb information, understand it, retain it, then what can you apply that to? Everything: medicine, money, management, marketing, Mandarin, music, martial arts. Everything in your life gets a lot easier. And so my question for the parents watching is like, you want to teach them what to learn, yes, but also I would say, how important would it be to teach them how to learn, how to focus, how to listen, how to take notes, how to study. So that would be the starting point, is this thing called meta learning. The second thing I would say is keep learning active. It's very hard, whether students are learning at home remotely, or even anyone who's working from home. And it's get confusing, right? Are you working from home or are you living at work? It's just like, it could be we're staring at screens all the time. And how can we turn learning active? Because learning, like life, is not a spectator sport, where the old model of learning, you and I, we had a 20th century education that prepared us for a 20th century world. And the challenge is a lot of times we were lectured to, and the human brain actually doesn't learn best through consumption. The brain learns better through creation and co-creation and creativity. And so how can you not just push information in a child's head? How can you get them to get curious and ask the right questions and roll up their sleeves? Because again, learning is not a spectator sport, just like life isn't. And so how can they be more active in the process? Whether it's experiential learning, whether it's doing things through games and contests and just interact, or apprenticeship. How can they roll up their sleeves and use all of their learning faculties, whether they like to watch or they like to read or they like to listen or they like to actually get involved and create kinesthetically. And then the last two things I would recommend for parents, and this again, we're just old children, right? In turn, no matter our age, This is not the time to play, and we have one life to figure this out. Get curious, and it's okay to play at the edge and practice at the edge of what's possible nowadays. The two last things I would recommend is state, meaning, we don't learn things in a bored state, and all learning is state dependent, meaning the emotional state that we bring to a subject or to a study or to our work or in our relationship, it far surpasses things cognitively, meaning it has to go from your head to your heart to your hands. That one of the keys to a better memory is adding emotion to it. And information by itself is forgettable, but information when it's tied to emotion becomes unforgettable. And think about the emotions we had primarily in school. Most people, I don't know, Dr. Promoter, what would you say most people experience school sitting in class? What's their primary dominant state or emotion when they're sitting in
I don't
chemistry
know if you
class?
would consider boredom to be an emotion, but
Yeah, very much so. And boredom on a scale of 0 to 10 is probably a zero. And if
as it
it's
relates to
information
learning.
times, yeah, if it's information times emotion becomes a long-term memory. If the emotion is boredom or zero, anything times zero is zero. So you wonder why, your kids or yourself, we forgot the periodic table because it wasn't very emotional. So I would remind the children that all learning is just like life is state dependent, and that we control how we feel. Teach your children the responsibility of emotional regulation and state management, meaning that your children, just like the leaders out there, the ones that are happiest, that they identify more with a thermostat than a thermometer. A thermometer and a child and an adult, sometimes we're a thermometer. A thermometer just reacts to the environment, it reacts to the temperature. And sometimes as human beings, we react to the economy, we react to politics, we react to how people treat us, right? But the happiest people feel more like the locus of control, or they have agency, they have a level of sovereignty, and the thermostat doesn't react to the environment. A thermostat gauges the environment, knows the temperature, but it sets the temperature and the environment reacts to it. And I think one of the most important things for us to do in terms of setting and being responsible for things, not just our behavior, but also how we feel. Make choices. We have a to-do list. What if we woke up and with our children had a to-feel list? Like, what are 3 emotions you want to cultivate today? Maybe it's a sense of play. Maybe it's a sense of curiosity. Maybe it's a sense of boldness. Because it's been my experiencing coaching for the past 3 decades is that we don't have emotions. A lot of times we're actually doing emotions. Just like we don't have energy, we don't have focus, we don't have creativity. And somebody listening could be like, yeah, it's the problem, Jim. I don't have any emotion, like I don't have any motivation or energy or creativity. We don't have those things. We do them. There's a process for generating energy, in terms of our diet, our sleep, our thoughts, and so on. There's a process for focusing. So you don't have focus, you do focus. And a big part of just giving people their power back is taking nouns and turning them into verbs. You don't have these things, you do these things, and it gives you your power back. So I would remind children that they control their state, that just because it's a bad weather outside doesn't mean you should feel bad on the outside, that we have this responsibility. And then finally, and then also obviously make teaching very, state inducing, state enriching,
Well,
and
let's
fun
open
and
that up
playful.
just a little bit more. I mean, we
Yeah.
understand that whether it's a positive or negative emotion, it makes sense that we would remember that, because if it was either something pleasurable or something threatened, we should remember what that circumstance was moving
Yes.
forward. But let's get real world in terms of a mother and father, or even in school, a teacher
Hmm.
interacting with a child. How can they bring that
Yeah.
knowledge that you just articulated to bear as it relates to teaching a concept?
Absolutely. And so let's do it right now. If I wanted to teach a student how to remember things, for instance. And we could do this now. And I would actually challenge everybody to do this at home. We'll make this kind of like a master class, if you will. And even if you're working out or driving or cleaning the house, you can still pay a certain amount of attention here. And this will be an example of this. All right. So a couple things. First of all, I do with children and adults, whether I'm on Zoom or um, they're they're here with me, in a room, in a classroom or a stadium. First of all, I'll have them do certain brain exercises physically to get their body moving. I think one of the fastest ways to change how we feel is by changing our physiology, because when we change our physiology, it tends to affect our psychology. So I'll do everything just fun to interrupt their normal routine, like super brain yoga, where they're massaging their earlobes with their opposite hand. And I know some people aren't watching this on video; they're listening on iTunes or Spotify, and they're taking a deep breath, and they're squatting
What is
down
he
and
doing now,
exhaling,
I wonder?
come up. You can inhale and go down and exhale, come up. And I'm doing this kind of silly, but also remember, we learn through emotions and laughing and fun, be more playful. Some people say, well, I stopped playing because I grew older. And I'm like, no, reverse that. You grew older because you stopped playing. So it's really not a chronological age. It's really more the age of our mindset and the age of our heart. And so I'll do certain thing like brain gym, educational kinesiology, cross crawls, where anything crossing the midpoint here to challenge our body, but it also changes people's state, including children's. At events, I'll do this superhero game where I'll have people get into teams, and you could do this with your children and their friends, and then they go back to back, and I count to 1, 2, 3, and then they turn around and they have to choose from one or three superheroes. Spider-Man, the playfulness of Spider-Man, they do his move, which is shooting his web, or Black Panther, which is his focus move, where he crosses his arms and that creates a focal point and focus and concentration, or Wonder Woman's confidence, the Wonder Woman pose, where you put your hands on your hips and you put your shoulders back and you put on your big smile, and they do that, and the goal is for the kids or the adults to match. And if they match, then they won, right? And they get to celebrate. But it drives the emotion and the physicality to the learning process. It's something I also do when I challenge people to remember things is I'll prime their brain. Like, for example, I mentioned earlier that I do these demonstrations. People can watch on YouTube if they haven't seen me live, where I memorize a list of words or numbers or names. But let's say I was going to give everybody here a list of things to remember. Let's say it happens to be some of my favorite brain foods, for instance. That I feel like are nutritious, but also delicious. So let's say I wanted to teach them that, because I bet anybody here has gone to the store to buy one thing, and have you ever come back with two bags full of things, except for that one thing that you went to the grocery store or the farmer's market for, right? And so maybe I'll give everybody, if it's okay, 10 of my favorite brain foods that I eat on the regular each week. And then I'll show everyone how to memorize it in a fun, playful way to add the emotion
Okay.
to it. Okay, so some of my favorite foods in no specific order. Um, we talked about this in some of these foods in when I interviewed you for our brain podcast. Avocados. I love avocados, and I won't go through why these are important or good, but because your listenership knows this as well as anybody. Blueberries. I like blueberries. I call them brain berries. They're neuroprotective. Um, Broccoli is something that I like to add into my diet. You mentioned olive oil. So it's something that you add to your avocado, and that kind of, where the pit is, which is one of my favorite brain foods. I do eat eggs if your diet allows. The choline in eggs, is very very good for my cognitive health. Again, talk to your functional medicine doctor, your expert, your nutritionist. I'm not one, but this is one that personally for me, because people ask like, what do I eat? Green leafy vegetables. Kale, spinach, and again, I think people are bio individuals. Some people can digest kale, other people it doesn't work for them. But find what works for you. But you get the idea. I like the fish. Your brain is mostly fat, so I get wild salmon, sardines. Very very good for the staple in my diet. Um, Sometimes I'll make like a golden milk with turmeric. So turmeric I'll throw on there. That's something just for some diversity. Um, and then finally, I eat a lot of walnuts with my blueberries throughout the day. And it's interesting because walnuts look like the human brain.
They
And I'm
do.
not
They
saying,
really do.
yeah, I'm not saying that there's science behind it, but a little mnemonic trick to help you to remember it. Um, Walnuts, the vitamin E, very neuroprotective. And then dark chocolate, in moderation. It's something I find that things that are good for my mood are generally good for my mind. And so those are 10 brain foods. And then let's say everybody here, you want to memorize that list in the exact order I gave it. I'll give everyone a quick, fun way. We're talking about all learning is state dependent to be able to memorize this. So everyone take a deep breath. Um, And then exhale and breathe normally. If you can, people could close their eyes. I welcome them to, because our visual focus leads to our mental focus, just like our visual health leads to our mental health often. Sometimes when we're staring at screens all the time, we have visual fatigue that leads to mental fatigue. Our brain, our eyes are kind of like part of our brain. So it's like outside of our skull. And so just if it helps you to focus, you could take a deep breath and close your eyes if it's safe. And I just want you to imagine everybody. I'm going to teach everyone a method called PI. And I call it PI in the book as a simple way to remember names or give a speech without notes, memorizing these brain foods. And P stands for picture. I'm sorry, P stands for place, because we tend to remember things that are placed in certain areas. In fact, when you forget someone's name, you ask yourself, where? Where do I know the person? Because often the context, the place will give you the content. And that's just through, you talk a lot about evolution and survival. As hunter-gatherers, we didn't need to memorize lots of numbers or maybe lots of words, but we certainly need to remember where things were and are. Where's the clean water? Where's the enemy tribe? Where's the fertile soil? Where's the fruitful berries, right? That was our survival. So we store information in places. And so P stands for place and pi. The I is imagine. We tend to remember things better when we can imagine it or see it in our mind's eye. And I bet a lot of your listeners or viewers, they're better at remembering faces than they are remembering names, right? You go to someone and say, I remember your face, but I forgot your name, right? You never go to someone and say the opposite. You never go to someone and say, I remember your name, but I forgot your face. That would make a lot of sense. But we tend to remember what we see. There's a Chinese proverb that says, what you see, what you hear, you forget. What you see, you remember. What you do, you understand. What I hear, I forget. I heard the name, but I forgot the name. What I see, I remember. I saw the face, I remember the face. And what I do, going back to the power of practice and exercise and getting involved and being active, you understand. So the I is imagine, because we tend to remember things better that we could see. And then finally, the E in pi is entwine. And entwine is just a simple word for connecting or linking together, associating things together, because that's all learning. All learning is connecting something you don't know to something that you do know. Even when the parents out there who have kids, or if you changed industry, you need to learn something brand new. All it is taking something unknown on the outside and connecting it to something known on the inside. Right? Even that's why we use metaphors and analogies, because I say, hey, it's like a thermostat or a thermometer. It's something that you know, and then relating personal responsibility to something you already know, right? It gives you your agency back. So the entwine is putting the place and the image together. Now that's a lot of words. Let's do it through practice. So you're taking a deep breath, you're exhaling, just relaxing. If you want, you can close your eyes, and we'll go through a quick visualization exercise. I want everyone, I'm going to take the P is place. I'm going to take 10 places on our body going from top to bottom. All right. And we're going to just go through it. And what I want everyone to do is just say with me the place that I'm pointing to and then touch it. So then the way you're hearing it, auditory, you're seeing it, and then also you're feeling it, right? And so the first place is the top of your head. I'm going to call it top. So everyone touch the top of your head and say the word top. All right.
Top.
Your second place is I'm pointing to my nose. So everyone point to your nose. And the second place is what? Say it out loud. Nose. And that's your auditory memory. Third place going down your body is your mouth. Third place is what? Our mouth. Good. And this is kinesthetic. Everyone do this because this is how we learn. Remember, being active and doing it as opposed to just hearing it and consuming it. Fourth place, you're going to go to the side of your head and you're going to touch your ears. So the fourth is your ears. What's the fourth place? Say it out loud. Ears. The fifth place, I'm touching my throat. So 5, halfway through, is our throat. What's 5? Throat. Good. 6, we're going to go to our shoulders. So let's touch our shoulders with both hands. 6 is shoulders. 7, we're going to go to our collarbone. So 7 is
Collarbone.
8, let's just wiggle our fingers. So we're going down our body. 8 fingers. 9 is going to be our belly. So I'm touching my stomach. 9 is belly. And then 10 is bottom. And we're going to touch our bottom. All right. 10 is bottom. All right. So now this is, again, there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. We have a trained memory and untrained memory. So part of that neuroplasticity building memory, the neurons that fire together, they're wired together, we're challenging our brain with novelty. And that's how you build a muscle. You give it novelty, right? You exercise, you do curls, and then you feed that muscle with nutrition. So novelty and nutrition, and then obviously sleep. And so if I was to alliterate that, I'd probably say naps because I want it to be N. I'm so obsessive about that. So novelty, nutrition, nap. All right, now let's go through you keep your eyes closed and go through the 10 places on our body. Just review it. So number 1 is the top of our head. 2, going down, is our nose. 3, going down right below our nose, our mouth, and the side of the head. Number 4, ears. And everyone do this with me. Number 5 is our throat. We're halfway there. 6 are our shoulders. 7, you're going right down to the middle, collarbone. 8, we're wiggling our fingers. 9, our belly. And 10 is our bottom. All right, so I'm not expecting everyone to know it forwards and backwards, but for the most part, we probably do, just with just 2 repetitions. Now, that's the P in pie, place. We have 10 places. Now, the I is imagine. Now, what we can imagine? The 10 brain foods. And then the E is entwine. We're going to put the image and entwine it to the place. So let's do it together. The key here is to see it in our mind's eye. And even if you can't imagine it, imagine you can imagine it, all right? And you're going to add it together using the power of emotion. We said information by itself is forgettable, but information tied with emotions become unforgettable. All right, let's do this. The first place is what? Top of the head. And the first brain food I mentioned were avocados. So I want everyone to pretend you're 8 years old, and you could teach your kids how to do this. Pretend you're 8 years old, and what can you imagine in a fun, visual way? Maybe you're using avocados to condition your hair, right? And that's all you have to do. And if you ever did that, you wouldn't have to see it 100 times. Most people memorize something by, I need 10 minutes to study this, or I'd repeat it 100 times in my head. If you use imagination, emotion, you're going to remember it long term. So just imagine guacamole on the top of your head. All right, and then we'll do the rest fast. Going down, second place is our nose. Second brain food I mentioned, blueberries. So blueberries coming out of our nose. If you're ever at a restaurant or at the farmer's market and you are talking to a friend, your significant other, and blueberries started coming out of their nose, you would never forget that. You wouldn't have to see it, study it, or rehearse it. You see it once, you have it. Blueberries coming out of your nose. Smell it. Imagine what that smells like. What does it feel like? Third place is our mouth. And the third brain food was broccoli. So I want everyone to imagine you have broccoli stuck in your teeth. Simple. But you want to make it extraordinary. So what would an 8-year-old do? Like a big stalk of broccoli in your teeth, and taste it, feel how annoying that is to have that stuck there. Good. Fourth place is our ears. And fourth brain food, we talked about olive oil. So you're cleaning your ears with olive oil, or maybe you're wearing olive earrings. The amount of things you could picture are limitless. So just pick something that's fun and creative. And by the way, this is great brain training because we're exercising our imagination, we're exercising our creativity, we're exercising our visualization, and we're building our memory. So olive oil and ears. Fifth place is our throat. I think the fifth one were eggs. So maybe instead of an Adam's apple, imagine you have a hard-boiled egg there, right? Or something, eggs on the throat, whatever you're cracking an egg on your throat, whatever you think of, if you could see it and feel it, you'll remember it. All right, good. And you're thinking, what's on the top of my head? What's in my nose? What I stuck in my teeth? Good. 6 are your shoulders. Now, that was green leafy vegetables, kale and spinach. Imagine shoulder pads made out of kale and maybe shoulder pad made out of spinach. It's odd, right? But if you look to your left and right and you balancing it there, good. Number 7 is our collarbone, and it was wild salmon or sardines. Imagine you have a necklace on your collar, salmon sushi. Maybe it's a day old. What does that smell like? And if it makes you go ill, if it gets an emotional reaction, it becomes unforgettable. And again, these are a means to an end. People say, well, that's so childish. But who are the fastest learners? Children, right? How fast can they learn a musical instrument? How fast can they learn another language? They're playful, they're willing to make mistakes. So imagine a necklace made out of salmon. And then finally, 8, 9, and 10. 8 were your fingers. I think I talked about turmeric or inflammation. Maybe you have turmeric all over your fingers, and it's that golden powder, and you can't get it off. You wash it with soap and water, it's just stuck. Turmeric all over your fingers. 9 is your belly. And you need to remember walnuts. So imagine walnuts coming out of your belly button. You're eating walnuts out of your belly. Oh, that's like, I don't even want to think about that. But you would certainly never forget it if you're quizzed on it the next day. So imagine walnuts in your belly button. And finally, 10th place is what? Your bottom. And the
Chocolate.
10th brain food, dark chocolate. I don't even need to know what everyone's thinking. Dark chocolate and bottom. Now, everybody, you're out and about at the farmer's market, you're at Air One or wherever you shop, and Dr. Perlmutter calls you up and says, "Hey, we're gonna have a drop acid party, a super brain party, right? Or brainwash party. And can you, while you're out, can you pick up these 10 foods?" And you're like, "Oh, I can't write it down." It's always, you always pick up the phone when you can't write something down, like you're driving or you're in the shower. I don't know why you pick up the phone in the shower, but Dr. Promo says, "You need these. Can you pick up these 10 things for our party to celebrate?" And you're like, "Can't write it down," but you could place each things on your body. And it took a lot more time to explain it than it is to do it, because you could do it in a split second. But now you're walking the aisles at your favorite health food store, and what's the first food you need to get that's on the top of your head? I want everyone just to say it
Avocado.
out loud. Avocados. And then our second place, which is our
Blueberries
nose,
coming out of the nose.
blueberries coming out of the nose. And then our mouth, our teeth, we have
Broccoli.
the broccoli. And then the ears,
Olive
we
oil.
have
Ayurvedic
olive
treatment.
oil. And then the throat,
Egg.
we
Adam's
had
apple.
Adam's apple that we replaced with the eggs. And then the shoulders, shoulder pads made out of
Kale or spinach.
good. And then the seven was the
The necklace
collar,
made of salmon.
salmon. Perfect. And that's a great brain food. Our fingers were covered in
Turmeric.
turmeric. And then out of our belly button, had
A
those,
walnut.
the, yeah, the walnuts. And finally, our bottom is the
Very
dark
chocolate.
chocolate.
Dark
Yes.
chocolate.
And here's the thing, and I imagine a lot of your listeners right now could probably do it even backwards. They could start from the bottom and go all the way
Course.
to the top of their head. And my point in bringing this up, you ask, how do you make learning fun? We could always use our imagination and add emotion and make it interactive and make it challenging and make it enjoyable, and just be creative like that. And it doesn't have to be for everything, but I could apply this, in the book I apply towards chemistry and teaching. I fool kids and adults to memorize the periodic table. I make up I make up a little game in my head, and I share it with them, saying, "Imagine a fire hydrant, and the fire hydrant is being pulled by a big helium balloon up in the sky, and the balloon is all of a sudden popped by a barrage of batteries, and the batteries came from this barrel that's sitting on the ground here, and on the side of the barrel is this big surfboard, and rolling down the board is a diamond, and the diamond hits Sir Lancelot in the head, and you bring him an oxygen mask, right? And you clean it with toothpaste, and then the toothpaste runs off and goes into a big neon sign." Like I explain a simple story like that, and then you're like, "What does that have to do with the periodic table?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, imagine fire hydrant. If we're playing charades or Pictionary, fire hydrant sounds like hydrogen, right? Hydrant, hydrogen." And it's pulled up by a big helium balloon. So that reminds you, hydrogen, helium, popped by batteries, right? And the batteries are lithium batteries to remind you of the third element of the periodic. It was lithium. And that came from a barrel ilium, beryllium. And the board for boron. And rolling down, it was a diamond, which represents carbon. And it hits a knight on his head, and that's nitrogen. You bring him an oxygen mask for oxygen. And so you could come up with, fun ways to learn anything. And the idea here, again, going back to learning, you make it active, you make it emotional, and you make it fun. And that's really the key. And then the last tip I'll give everybody who's listening, again, this is for remote workers, this is regardless of your age or stage in life. I would say, besides the criteria that we always put out there, how to master things faster, I would say teach. Learn something with the intention of teaching somebody else, because your intention matters. You take advantage of something called the explanation effect. That if you had to explain the 10 brain foods and how to do it, how to memorize it to somebody else, you would focus better. You would concentrate better. You would take better notes. You would ask more questions, right? You would own that information. And so anything that you want to learn faster, including your children, have them teach you what they're learning, right? Because you're pulling it out of them as opposed to pushing and hoping the information sticks in, and that's really the best way to learn something, is to learn it with the
So
intention of
these
teaching somebody
tools
else.
are in your book,
Yes.
and will give people the clues they need to. I mean, all is not lost. People should really understand that uh, they have the ability to amp this up rather quickly.
I believe it's been my experience in our book. It's endorsed by so many individuals, from the Cleveland Clinic Center for Brain Health to some of the top athletes and actors and educators and business individuals. But regardless of whatever age and stage, whether it's a child with learning challenges or somebody more senior that's concerned about keeping their brain young and healthy and active, and everyone in between, I believe that we think about technology a lot, right? And we people are always upgrading their apps or their phone or their computers, but the most important technology is what created all those things, which is the human brain. I'm showing this on video. I know not everyone's watching this on video. This is a recent issue of Entrepreneur magazine, and I'm grateful to be on the cover of it. But more importantly than this kid, there's this dude holding a brain. It's the title, "Upgrade Your Brain." Right. And I really feel like that we need to, upgrade that as much. And that's why I'm such a big fan of your work, and your books and your podcast, just love your brain. People always see me pointing to my brain or wearing a brain shirt. It's what you see, you take care of. But imagine this, like if you were born and when you hit a driving age, you were given a car, but that was your car for the rest of your life and you can't switch out that car. How well would you maintain that car? Pretty well, right?
You would
I
look at the
mean,
manual. The first thing you do
yes,
is you'd read the manual, and we never got the manual for the brain.
yes. And then we have this vehicle, which is our human body, which part of our body is our brain, and this is the one that we have. And so I would say love our brain, and that's because it's the most important thing and it controls every other area of your life. And if there's one message here besides loving your brain is, fall in love with learning again. There is an art and science of learning how to learn. And so I wrote this book, Limitless, Upgrade Your Brain, Learning to Get Faster, Unlock Your Exceptional Life, to be that owner's manual to learn and to have a healthy brain.
Jim, where do people learn more about you?
I would love it actually to connect on social media, just like your team. I'm extremely active there, so it's always at Jim Kwik. I just have
At
to
Jim
spell the
Quick.
name right, Kwik. That's really my last name. It's my father's name, my grandfather's name. I didn't change it. It's not my stage name. It's something I was just kind of born. My life was pretty much planned out. So I would encourage everybody to take a screenshot of this conversation and whatever your platform you're listening to it, and tag Dr. Perlmutter and tag me so you see it. And then tell us if you remember those 10 brain foods from memory. And I'll actually, because you tag us, and follow us, I'll see it and I'll repost some of my favorites. And I'll actually gift one copy of Limitless, signed copy to one person in your community, just as a thank you for, again, being active. Learning in life is not a spectator sport. And if you want to find the book, you could just go to limitlessbook.com or wherever you buy books.
Super. Thank you for today. As I said early on, that we're doing so much work on the hardware, and now you're giving us software tools, which is really the functionality part that we all really need. So it's really, really great work. And I think the way you presented it, it's available to everybody.
Yes. That's really it. Regardless of our age or our background or anything else. A lot of times people will come to me at events and they'll say, "Jim, I'm just too old," or "Jim, I have a horrible memory." I'll always say, "Stop. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them." And so we always be cognizant of our self-talk. And maybe that's a takeaway for somebody here, that your brain is this incredible supercomputer and your self-talk is the program it will run. Talk about software, right? But if you say to yourself, "I'm not good at remembering people's names," you will not remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. Just like everything else, we're talking about what's contagious, viruses and negativity. But so, what's also contagious? Positivity and performance.
You
I
bet.
love your platform, the conversations that you have, because you take a strength-based approach and you give people hope and you give people real help. I think that's what the world needs. I believe that everyone you're listening to this, again, regardless of your age, that we're all on this quest, this journey to realize and reveal our fullest potential, and we're all walking home together. And I think, how do you become limitless in a limited world? We do it together. And
Mm.
that's so very important, that there's a version of yourself, there's a version of your brain, there's a version of your business, your career, your schooling, your family. There's a version of yourself that you haven't met yet. The goal is show up every single day for yourself. you're the greatest until you're introduced to that person, right?
Mm.
You're the greatest project you're ever going to get to work on. Take time, make time, create magic.
Yeah, and the part about doing it together these days, so
Yeah,
important. What a great message! Thank you for spending time with us today. You're the best, and
appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to talking to you more.
Much more. Thank you, everybody.
Wow, what a cool guy! These are some really amazing insights that we have into what we can do to really amp it up, really bring our game up a notch in terms of our mental performance. And, is there anything as important as that in terms of what we do day to day? So, thank you, Jim Kwik. Thank you for giving us this incredible insight into what we can do. Thanks for joining me today, Dr. David Perlmutter, here on The Empowering Neurologist, and we will be back soon. Bye for now.